Hello everyone, I'm Rufin Shafiq. Today we are going to talk about the topic bending. So, what is a bending or what is bending means? Bending is a manufacturing process that produces a V shape, U shape, or channel shape along a straight axis in ductile materials, most commonly sheet metal, which is commonly used equipment include box and pan brakes, brake presses, and other specialized machine presses. So the material on outside of the bend tends to be stretched and the material on the inside tends to be compressed. Bending is a very common sheet metal operation. So these are the figures for bending. So the next topic is ram and press bending. So what does that mean? So the ram bending process is the one in which the material is segment bended in multiple locations in order to achieve the required radius. Ram bending is a unique approach in adjusting and forming material to customers' specifications. So there is no metal used in this process. It bends to 165 degree and also the automotive exhaust pipes and other tubing components used in large quantities are commonly bent by this method. So this is the figure for ram and press bending. So the next topic is stretch bending. A stretch bending is a part of metal forming where the metal is bent or stretched to create perfectly shaped automotive parts. A machine called a stretch press usually performs this process, shaping multiple different types of metal. When used in manufacturing, stretch bending helps to create automotive parts. So the one common application for this process is bending of structural members made from angle or channel sections when such members require a curved shape. So this is the figure for the stretch bending. So we can see there is two clamps and a stationary die and also a irregular curve. So the next topic is wrinkle bending. So the wrinkle bending is a process where wrinkles are introduced in a steel pipe during construction to obtain pipeline alignment. Bending practices used during pipeline construction up until 1955 typically resulted in circumferential pipe deformation or wrinkles on.
Hi everyone, I would like to talk to you about press brake forming. Press braking or brake forming is a metal deformation process. It is a figure that shows various steps involved in the press braking process. The initial product is laid over the die block and punched using a press brake into a pre-arranged mold or die, and we acquire the shaped workpiece. Press braking ensures a highly precise metal bend for several types of parts. The press braking process makes a variety of shapes, some of the most common shapes being a 90-degree rip form, V-bottom channel, closing, double form, hat channel, offset, open hat channel, and some others. The classification of press brake systems. Mechanical press brakes designed to convert circular motion into linear motion. Pneumatic press brake uses air pressure to move the ram. Hydraulic press brake uses hydraulic oil and a hydraulic pump as a power source. Servo electric press brake uses a servo motor that forces the ram to move vertically. The essential parts of a press brakes: punch, workpiece, die are the most essential parts in a press brake. Punch is the tool that bends the workpiece by punching them into the die. Workpiece, the surface on which the material is placed and the bending is applied. Die, the tool which allows the workpiece to bend. It is a graphical representation of the press brake forming. In this process, a metal sheet is used and bended into a different shape in a prearranged shape using this press. These are the different types of bends we can get from the press brake forming. 90-degree rib form, 90-degree bottom or V bottom, channel, closing, double form, hatch channel, empty offset, offset, open hatch channel, radius, single form, wipe die are the different shapes. Advantages of press brake forming: ultimate accuracy, reduce waste material, complex shape forming, flexibility, and cost effective. Applications of press brakes. Press brakes are applied in various fields: automotive, aerospace, furniture, marine engineering, metal artwork, metal containers, and other sheet applications. Thank you everyone for listening to this presentation.
Hello everyone, I am Shahrukh Shanwaz and now we are going to discuss about tube bending. So let's see what is tube bending. Tube bending is any metal forming processes used to permanently form pipes or tubing. Tube bending may be form bound or use free-form bending procedures, and it may use heat-supported or cold-forming procedures. For bending tubes to a specific shape or geometry, force must be applied so as to exceed the yield point of the material, but below the ultimate tensile strength of the material. As the tube is bent over a specific radius, the outside wall will stretch in tension, while the inside wall bends under compressive forces. The boundary line through the center of the tube between the tension and the compression zone is called neutral axis, where the material will be free from all forces. Now let's discuss about the different methods of tube bending. First is rotary draw bending. Rotary draw bending uses a movable bending die or form block, along with a clamping die and a pressure bar. The process begins by clamping the tube against the form block and clamp. Then the form block and the clamp together is related to bend the tube. The pressure bar is used to support the unbent region of the tube during the process. This is the most common tube bending method. Rotary draw bending can produce bends up to 1800 with standard tooling. The next is compression bending. Compression bending is similar to rotary draw bending, except the bending form block remains stationary, rather than rotating with tube. A wiper shoe is used to hold the tube and bend it around the contour of the fixed form block. This method is used where there is minimum climbing space between the bends. And then we have mandrel bending. Mandrel bending is another modified form of rotary draw bending. Here a mandrel is inserted into a pipe or tube during bending so that the shape and diameter is maintained. The mandrel supports the pipe internally and ensures that the interior curvature of the pipe is the best possible bend and is not deformed. Mandrel bending maintains a good finish and is best used for handrails, ornamental iron work, exhaust pipe, roll cages, and all stainless steel and aluminum tubing. Finally, we have stretch bending. The tube or pipe is held at two ends by two grippers and it is stretched by force applied to the grippers. At the same time, force is applied through the gripper perpendicular to the length of the tube also. Also, the tube is supported by the form block. It gets bent as per the contour of the form block. The pipe or tube is deformed inside and outside of the curvature. Depending on the thickness of the pipe or tube material, this process will deform the tube or the pipe into an oval shape. This is the end of tube bending. Thank you everyone for listening.
Good evening. Today we are learning about forming process. So first of all, what is forming process? So forming process is also known as metal forming in a set of manufacturing process by which raw material converted into a product. In this process, we apply stress like tension, compression, shear, etc. to deform the raw material. So forming is mainly used to shape a material. So it is mainly done to obtain the desired shape for a material. Um, Now there are different steps in forming. So the classification of forming is based on three types. One is bulk forming, which is also classified into rolling, extrusion, forging, wire drawing, and squeezing. The next is metal sheet forming, that is classified into bending, deep drawing, and shearing. And the third classification is powder metal forming, which is powder forging, powder injection, and powder extrusion. So coming to bulk forging process, like mentioned earlier, is divided into five types, which is rolling, extrusion, forging, wire drawing, and squeezing. So in rolling, as the picture suggests, is one of the most useful process of forming. And as you can see in the picture, two rolls of a desired diameter are made to rotate in opposite direction, and the metal is passed through the rollers, and the desired thickness of the metal is obtained by passing it through the rollers. So this is rolling. The next process is extrusion. The extrusion process is much different from other processes. In this process, the metal is heated at high temperature, then the metal is pressed by a comprehensive force of the die. So the die has an opening through which the metal heated flows at the time of pressing by a ram. Hence, the proper shape can be made. Apart from that, in the extrusion process, the metal is heated so much that it becomes like a fluid and it can flow. The next process is forging. So for like forging process, as the picture suggests, it's actually compressing of a metal by using two hydraulic rams to obtain the desired shape, and minute projections of the liquid metal will be projected to the sides, which is actually known as the flash. Uh, the flash can be trimmed off after forging process. The next process is wire drawing. It's a kind of extrusion process, but not exactly. A wire shaped die is used here. The workpiece is passed through the die and takes the cross section of the die opening. It's actually a pull process. The next process is squeezing. Squeezing is one of the most useful forming process. In this process, die is used. The die should be closed type die. At first, the die is to be heated, then molten metal is placed to one part of the die. So next we come to the metal sheet forming process. Metal sheet forming process is classified into bending, deep drawing, and shearing. So the bending process, as the picture suggests, um, uh, three rollers are kept in a triangular manner, and the material is passed through the rollers, and there is a bend in the metal, so metals are actually bent through this way. The next process is deep drawing. In this operation, a hollow cup-shaped die is used. The die is clamped using the blank holder. In this process, the workpiece placed over the die and a punch exerted the force on the workpiece. By this force, sheet metal extends and fills the cavity and takes the shape of the die. The next process is shearing. In this operation, the metal sheet is in the cantilever position and a punch coming from the top exerted the force on the cantilever position of the sheet. Shearing is just a cutting operation of the metal sheet. So the next method is powder metal forming. So that is also classified into powder forming, powder injection, and powder extrusion. So forging method. As the name denotes, powder forging, that means that we use powder metals to get the finished product. In this process, a mixture of blended powder poured into the die through a hopper, and the pressing is done using a preform. Generally, to get a solid bonding, we need to heat the preform. The process is completed into three steps. The perform is heated so that binding can be easily done. Pre-alloy powder put into the die and pressed by the preform. In this process, actually, we get 80 to 85% solid density, and after pressing done by preform, it again goes for mechanical pressing, so that we can increase the density up to 98% or 99.5%. The next is powder injection. The powder injection process is also called metal injection molding. In this process, the metal powders are blended with wax or polymer based binder. The blended mixture undergoes compaction due to pressure exerted by the screw and comes out through the die and takes shape of it. And the next process is powder extrusion. In this process, a hydrostatic compressive force is act on the powder metal. A die is fixed at the opposite side of the force applies. So when a force is act on the powder, it comes out through the die and takes the shape of the die. Thank you.
Hi, today I am going to explain about the process of spinning. What is spinning? It is a metal forming process used to make axially symmetric parts by gradual forming over a rotating mandrel by means of a rounded tool or roller. This process is somewhat similar to that of forming clay pots on potter's wheel. There are three basic types of spinning process, namely conventional spinning, shear spinning, and tube spinning. Conventional spinning. In this process, a circular blank of sheet metal is held against a rotating mandrel of the desired shape of final product. A tool or roller is pressed against the rotating blank to deform it as per the shape of mandrel. Here the metal is bent around a moving circular axis, conforming to the shape of rotating mandrel. Figure illustrates the process. The thickness of metal remains unchanged during the forming process. The process is used to make a conical and curved shapes in smaller quantities. Shear spinning. This process is also called as power spinning, floor turning, shear forming, hydro spinning, and spin forging. As in the conventional